Hey everyone, welcome back to a Dispy primer on Christian nationalism. Again, that title comes from the fact that I am a dispensationalist and I'm making these videos primarily with a dispensationalist audience in mind. Now, this third video is going to look at human culture and the cultural mandate, and in particular, the continuity or discontinuity of the cultural mandate in our age. Now, the first video we looked at, we considered what I called premillennial complementarianism. And I made the point that premillennial complementarianism really isn't any different than mill or post-mill complementarianism. And the reason being, complementarianism is a view that seeks to articulate what does it look like to carry out divinely delegated authority according to God's revealed will in a particular sphere. Right? We have divinely delegated authority. It needs to be exercised within a particular sphere. And within complementarianism, we're talking about the sphere of the church and the home in particular. And eschatology then really doesn't factor into how we carry out, exercise, and respond to authority in those spheres. Well, the same is true then with Christian nationalism. We're talking about the exercise of divinely delegated authority within a particular sphere, and now that sphere is the civil realm and the civil magistrate. And then in the second video, we noted that we have to differentiate between God's decretive will and God's revealed will. God's revealed will, his prescriptive will, what we're supposed to be doing. For example, Adam and Eve were not supposed to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. God's prescriptive will, his revealed will, sometimes contradicts his decretive will. And with Adam and Eve, we know that God from eternity past had decreed that despite telling them not to, they went ahead and did it anyway. God had decreed that Adam and Eve would, in fact, eat from that tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now, sometimes God tells us by the form of prophecy what his decretive will is for the future. And we want to be careful to delineate, again, between his revealed will and his prescriptive will. The dispensationalist rightly notes that things are going to get worse. And therefore, they seem to take this disconnected, disengaged position in the political realm because, hey, God said things are going to get worse. But that is his decretive will. That's what he's decreed. That's not God's revealed will. We're trying to answer the question of God's revealed will. And I think a great example of this is found in the last chapters of Deuteronomy, where Moses tells the nation of Israel right before his death that after they get into the land, they're going to be unfaithful to God and eventually they're going to be exiled. So that is Moses, by way of prophecy, telling the nation of Israel what God's decretive will is for the future. They are going to apostatize. But that does not contradict God's revealed will for the nation of Israel. Israel is still supposed to obey God. And so that's what we're trying to delineate here in some of these videos. Now we move on to our third topic, which is the cultural mandate. The cultural mandate. And a lot of Christians, I think particularly in the dispensational camp, they don't think much about the cultural mandate anymore. And so let me first just define the cultural mandate. We get it in Genesis chapter 1, where God speaks to Adam and to Eve. And in Genesis chapter 1, particularly verses 26, 27, 28, but particularly in 128, God blessed them. God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the sky, and over every living thing that creeps on the earth. So man is to have dominion over the earth, and we see that in the garden with the instructions that are given in the garden. He plants man in the garden to cultivate it and to keep it. That's giving man a job, that cultivation. And the keeping really is the word for guard. So he's in the garden, he's to expand the garden, and he's to protect the garden. We find out in Genesis 3 who he's supposed to protect it from. But going back then to 128, be fruitful, multiply, and and fill the earth. Now, many think fill the earth is merely talking about fill it with people, but there's good reason to not see that as the case, because the next time this word for fill shows up is in Genesis chapter 6, when in fact the world is now filled. And in Genesis chapter 6, we find out that the world is actually filled with evil. In Genesis chapter 6, verse 11, now the earth was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. And so this word for filled, really, it's not the word itself, but the idea here is that Adam and Eve and mankind were to fill the world with God glorifying culture. And that mandate continues to today. Sometimes Christians think that they are disconnected from the culture. No, no, no. We are part of the culture in the same way that when we're out driving and we're stuck in traffic, it's not that we're stuck in traffic, it's that we're a part of the traffic, and we are part of the culture, and we're supposed to be creating God glorifying culture. And that's just not my perspective. Number one, we have the cultural mandate stated in Genesis 1, but it's also restated to Noah after Noah gets out of the ark. God is very explicit. Noah is told in Genesis 9:1, God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. So there it is. There's the restatement of the cultural mandate post fall and post flood. Now, it's not just my opinion that this is the case. I just want to show you a citation from this book. This is the John MacArthur and Richard Mayhew Biblical Doctrine Systematic Theology textbook. Now, MacArthur didn't write this particular section, but he did sign off on it. And I'm not saying he agrees with this section, but listen to what this textbook says about the cultural mandate in human culture. Here we read on page 446, human culture has roots in Genesis 1 through 2. The command for man to rule and subdue the earth and its creatures is often referred to as the cultural mandate, since man was to use his abilities and status as God's image bearer to control the creation on God's behalf. This includes the land, vegetation, animals, birds, and aquatic creatures. In Genesis 2:15, God put Adam, quote, in the Garden of Eden to work it and to keep it, end quote. Man was given an earthly vocation in this created culture. Culture includes works, art, music, education, and all areas where man interacts with his environment. God is the creator of culture, and man is called to carry it out on God's behalf. Now, many dispensationalists will say, well, yeah, but that really ended with the fall. But here's how this section ends. And the final paragraph on page 449 says, in sum, God created culture. He made a diverse world, tasked man to rule and subdue it for its glory. There is no dichotomy between God and culture or man and culture. God expects man to successfully rule over his creation. Psalm 8:4-8. Although the complete fulfillment of this expectation awaits Jesus' kingdom in the, quote, world to come, end quote, Hebrews 2:5-8. So even here in this textbook, it's very explicit that God still expects us to be carrying out the cultural mandate. That is to say, we are to be subduing this earth and bringing all aspects of culture into conformity with the revealed will of God. It's not that it's us against culture. No, we are a part of the culture. We are shaped by the culture, and we are to be shaping culture. And that very much then ties into politics and our political engagement. So I think as dispensationalists, we really need to consider whether or not we take the cultural mandate seriously today. We will not be serious about it if we're not thinking about it, if we're not consciously aware of the fact that this is what we're supposed to be doing. And again, this isn't just a modern idea. One note that you might want to Google, if you want to look up John Flavel, he provides a commentary on one of the most well-known questions in the Westminster Catechism, the chief end of man, to glorify God and enjoy him. And then he answers in his catechism, in his question and answer, he says, okay, seeing as that there is a chief end, that supposes that there's an inferior end. And what is that inferior end? Well, it is, and then he actually cites Genesis 1, 26, 27, 28, that man is to be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it. And so Flavel is pointing out that the way we carry out our chief end is by the means of carrying out the cultural mandate. So, this is again an area where we as dispensationalists need to do a little bit more thinking. I hope that's helpful.